It's springtime. It's that time of the year when we figure out that our AC systems need to be recharged or aren't working at all. If your AC system isn't blowing cold, the first thing you can try is just simply recharging it. If you can recharge your system and that will last you through the summer, then generally speaking that's good enough. If you have a slow leak but not so fast that you need to recharge it multiple times per season, that's good enough for most people on an older vehicle, and that's good enough for me. Unfortunately, on this particular vehicle, which is a 2000 Dodge Ram, the refrigerant that we just recharged it with leaked out in just a couple hours. So obviously we have a pretty good sized leak that we're going to need to repair or replace some component to hold the charge for the whole season. Depending on how bad your leak is going to dictate what steps you need to take. If you have absolutely no pressure in the system, that's going to create an opportunity for moisture to get into the system, which can make it run a lot less efficiently or not at all, and wear out or damage the system much faster than usual. When that happens, you're going to need a few more specialized tools, such as a manifold pressure gauge set and a vacuum pump to suck out all of the moisture, well, to reduce the pressure inside the system to cause the water to evaporate and be evacuated more precisely. In this case, it doesn't look like the pressure ever got down to zero. It looks like the system stayed pressurized. It's just got a leak that's bad enough that it can't hold enough pressure to stay running and stay blowing cold. Large leaks can be pretty easy to find. You can just look at the system and see it or hear it. Small leaks can be harder to find, and the most common way to find those is to use some simple UV dye. For that, we just need a couple simple tools. We have a UV flashlight here, and we have a can of refrigerant that has some UV dye in it. Some DuPont 134A with UV dye leak detector. So the procedure here is going to be very similar to the procedure for simply recharging your AC. We're going to charge the system with enough of this refrigerant to get the AC compressor to kick on and cycle the refrigerant and the dye through the system, and then we're going to use the black light to see where that leak is developing. And we're ready to connect the refrigerant to the low side port on our AC system, and whenever we work with refrigerant, we want to get some eye protection and ideally some hand protection as well. I'm going to get some gloves in just a moment. So you need to find the low side service port on your AC system. Here's this one right here, and we're just going to connect the Schrader valve just like that. Make sure we've got a good connection, and we're going to screw in this top screw here to pierce the top seal on the canister, and then we're just going to unscrew it to release the refrigerant into the system. It can also be a good idea to just unscrew this just a tiny bit and let a little bit out, a little bit of refrigerant out to allow the air to evacuate that was in the hose when you connected it. Not crucial, but best practice. And before we do that, I'm going to get some gloves and we're going to turn the vehicle on. Alright, we've got the vehicle powered on, we've got the AC turned on to max AC, but of course there's not enough pressure in the system yet for the AC clutch to kick on and for the AC to start cycling. We're just going to open the valve for our canister and keep an eye on our pressure gauge and try and keep that in the green. And on this particular canister, because it has the UV dye in it, it recommends that you keep it upside down, which is what we're going to do. A little bit further, I guess. There it goes. I'm going to turn that upside down, as the instructions suggest. And just let that bleed in there. And for a can this size, it can take a good 15 minutes. Oh, there we go. We just built enough pressure to kick on the AC compressor briefly. We're going to want a little bit more than that. This refrigerant is just going to leak out, so we don't want to put too much in there. We want to vent as little of this into the atmosphere as possible and as few dollars out of your pocket as possible. But depending on how much your system needs in order to run the compressor, we just want be able to continuously cycle and run that UV dye through the system and tell us where our leak is. So we're just going to keep filling this up until we can get the AC compressor to cycle continuously, then stop filling it, and then start looking for our leak. And we let the truck idle for a little while with it on max AC to let that dye circulate through the system while we were looking for leaks. And just to give you an idea of what you're going to be looking for, you can see how the dye fluoresces under the UV light, just like that. This is just the rag we were using on the fitting when we disconnected it. And here we just opened up one of the valves on our manifold pressure gauges, and you can see how it's fluorescing right here. And that's what you're going to be looking for, is some fluorescence just like that, and that's going to tell you where your leak is. Now on this particular vehicle, we weren't able to find the leak. It's either in the evaporator core inside of the dash, which is encased in plastic and is unfortunately a common fail part on this particular vehicle. But we also noticed that there was a bit of a seeping noise coming from the pressure sensor switch here, and if we just tightened it just a tiny bit, that seeping noise went away, even though we didn't actually see any dye. It seemed like the dye was just accumulating inside the switch itself. It was a very small leak, but enough that would leak out to the point where it wouldn't be able to run the compressor after several hours like we were experiencing. But just to give you a general idea of what you're going to be looking for, you're just going to want to take your UV light and very carefully and deliberately go through every part of your AC system. Here we've got the dryer accumulator back here. You want to try and look on the bottom for anything that might be kind of out of your typical field of view from the engine bay. Follow the lines along. Try and look inside the insulation here where that leak might be hiding. Most often you're going to find leaks at junctions where there's an O-ring that's maybe worn out or a fitting or something like that. The actual Schrader valve, it's very common for these to leak, and you might need to replace those. So you want to focus your search efforts on those. We're just checking these fittings here. You want to make sure that you're able to do a thorough examination of your condenser here, which is typically going to be the frontmost radiator in the series of radiators in the front of your car. On this vehicle, it's very easy to see. Some vehicles it might be a little bit harder, but we just want to check these junctions here really carefully and make sure there's no leaks here, and then just go over the entire radiator very carefully. It's very easy for these radiators to develop leaks. And if you put stop leak in your system, this is the kind of leak that might fix. Is leaks in your evaporator here, or I'm sorry, condenser. So we've checked both sides of it, looking for any kind of leaks that we can see. There's the transmission cooler right on the other side, makes it a little bit harder to see. We don't see any leaks here. The AC compressor is also obviously a common place of interest. You're going to want to look at the area just behind the AC compressor. The seals back there sometimes can become compromised. There's going to be the pressure switch here, all the lines running around. Try and get all the different angles here. And then once you've covered everything in the engine bay, usually what happens is you have two lines that run through your firewall back into your evaporator core. You can see those two lines right here. And the evaporator core is typically on the other side of your firewall in your cabin. And on a lot of cars, that evaporator core will be pretty accessible. There will be a shroud you can remove, or it'll be half exposed or something like that. On this particular vehicle, there's really no way to inspect the evaporator core without removing the entire assembly, unfortunately. And as I said, that's a common fail part on this particular vehicle. But we're fortunately able to find at least a suspect for leak on that pressure switch. Even though the dye didn't help us out, hopefully it will help you out a little bit more. We're just going to finish filling it up and see if it leaks out on us again. Hopefully it doesn't. If not, we're going to be tearing apart the dash and trying to get to that evaporator core and see if we can spot a leak there once it's already removed from the vehicle. But that's pretty much all there is to this procedure. As you can see, it's very straightforward. Really doesn't need much in the way of special tools. We used our manifold pressure gauge set just because we had it. It's absolutely not necessary. If your system does get to the point where there's no pressure in it, you are going to need a gauge set like this and a vacuum pump to remove all the oxygen and moisture from your system before you pressurize it. And that's, of course, once you fix the leak itself. And once upon a time, those tools were prohibitively expensive, but these days you can get them on Amazon.com or Harbor Freight for certainly much less than you would pay a shop to do this kind of work, because this work can be very involved, as you can see. But you can save a lot of money and have some very useful tools when you're done, and you can help your friends with AC problems or help yourself down the road. That's pretty much all there is to it. If you have any questions, feel free to post them on the video, and I'll do my best to try to help. Thanks.